The 90s were a wild time for music. Gritty, loud, full of edge. Bands emerged swinging, broke the charts, filled the venues. Then, nothing. Like they were erased. A few had a single song, and then vanished. Some were about to blow up. And then, poof, was it bad luck, label drama, burnout, or something darker? We're not talking about Nirvana or Oasis. These names are buried deep. Songs you forgot you knew, posters that used to hang on bedroom walls, now gather dust in a box somewhere. This isn't just a list, it's a return trip into a weird, cranking decade where some great bands never received a second chance. One even had a song deemed too hot for radio. And wait until you see what band number 9 went through. 1. Deep Blue Something.
Lines have come between us, still I know you.
They wrote one of the most memorable songs of the 90s, and then they vanished. You're familiar with Breakfast at Tiffany's, no? That oddly infectious song you couldn't escape at every 90s party. It wasn't just a hit, it was massive. Number 5 in the US. Number 1 in the UK. Deep Blue Something, just some college kids from Texas, suddenly found themselves on world tours. But here's the catch, they weren't prepared for the fame. Their next album, barely released in the US, just quietly, released in Japan. Legal problems, label drama, nothing was going their way. And so, their momentum fizzled. Quickly, then, poof, they were gone. No scandal, no big blowout, just silence. They attempted a return in 2001. But music had evolved. Nobody was listening. The band faded, quietly. But here's the weird part. They returned in 2014, just for the music. No pressure, no spotlight. And yet, for most people, all they remember is that one song. And that's the type of celebrity no one prepares you for. 2. Semisonic.
Closing time, open all the doors and
This band became famous for saying goodbye, and then really left. Semisonic unleashed Closing Time in 1998, and boom, it turned into the music of endings, bars, parties, even school dances. But here's the twist. The whole premise was a ruse. Dan Wilson penned it about being a father, yet the meaning didn't matter to anyone. The song took off, and Semisonic was everywhere. But fame's weird. Their follow-up album, all about chemistry, was smarter, deeper, and completely ignored. It flopped hard, so the band receded. Quietly, no official split, just life taking over. Dan went solo. He began writing songs for other artists. And then suddenly, boom, he was co-writing Adele's Someone Like You. Grammy win, big comeback. Just not for Semisonic. Years passed. Then in 2020, they returned with new music out of nowhere. No hype, no headlines. But for most of us, there's still that band that played when the lights came on. And the true story about that song, almost no one knows it. 3. Crash Test Dummies.
Once there was this kid who got into an accident.
That voice, deep, slow, strange. You either loved it or hated it, but you never forgot it. Crash Test Dummies released And yes, that's actually the title, in 1993. It was haunting, it was weird, and it was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. The Winnipeg-based band went global, seemingly overnight. But here's where it gets complicated. They never intended to be pop stars. Their brand was too quirky, too lethargic, too unfamiliar. And after that one hit, the world moved on, fast. Their next albums barely noticed. The label didn't even know how to sell them anymore. So, support vanished. And when the spotlight dimmed, so did the Dummies. Brad Roberts, the deep voice you heard behind it all, was in a serious car crash. It changed everything. He got better, but the momentum didn't. The band kept putting out music, but almost no one heard it. They never officially quit. They're still out there, but they will always be remembered for one odd song and a voice. no one could mimic. Fourth, Blind Melon. It had all been going right until it all came crashing down. Blind Melon's No Rain in 1992. That video of the little bee girl, iconic, the song, a total vibe. They didn't try to fit in, and that's precisely why people loved them. But behind the scenes, it was a madhouse. The lead singer, Shannon Hoon, had a voice that could slice through anything. But he had demons too. Drugs, pressure. Fame came fast, too fast. They toured hard. They recorded fast. So when their second album came out, it made a splash, but got lost in the noise. Fans didn't connect. Then came the crash. Just a year later, Shannon was discovered dead on the tour bus, overdose, and that was that. Blind Melon was no more. They tried to continue. They even got themselves a new singer years later, but it wasn't the same. And that magic, that broken, beautiful energy, died with Shannon. And the world continues to wonder what might have been if he'd not left. 5. Primitive radio gods. They didn't mean to become famous, it just happened. Primitive radio gods were never built for the spotlight. In 1996, they dropped Standing Outside a Broken Phone Booth with Money in My Hand. Long name, big song, out of nowhere. It became a radio monster, moody, mysterious, and somehow ahead of its time. But here's the twist. That song, it was recorded years before it became a hit. It sat in a drawer until a label picked it up. By chance, suddenly, a track they made on an old computer was playing on every station in America. But nothing after that stuck. Their next album came too late. The scene had already moved on. They were too indie for pop radio and too experimental for alt-rock. So, no one knew what to do with them. They kept releasing music, quietly, for years. No fame, no noise, and even now, most people don't know their name. But they do remember that haunting song that played once and never left your brain. 6. Spacehog. They looked like rock stars because they were. When Spacehog broke through with In the Meantime in 1995, they seemed like the next big thing. 4 glammy Brit guys in New York playing music that put a chunky spin on Bowie space rock. It was strange, noisy, and never to be forgotten. That song crushed top 40, radio hits, MTV rotation. They were everywhere. But the success came thick and fast and then hit a wall. Their subsequent albums were ambitious, but didn't resonate. Some blamed the timing, others pointed fingers at ego conflicts within the band. So when the second album didn't do as well, labels gave up on them. But behind the scenes, the band members were burning out. The magic wasn't present anymore. So they split. The frontman, Royston Langdon, made a go at solo stuff. There were reunions, some tours, a few small releases, but the spotlight never returned to him. And yet, in the meantime, continues to land sync deals in shows and trailers. It's wild, that one song that broke them, and one silence that proved them extinct. 7. Len.
I was lying on the grass a Sunday morning of last week, indulging in myself.
They ruled one summer and then disappeared, as if never there. In 1999, Len released Steal My Sunshine, and it was everywhere. That springy beat, the give-and-take vocals, the beachy vibe, it felt like pure sunshine. It eventually hit top 10 in the US and became a worldwide summer anthem. But here's what no one saw coming. Len wasn't even a real band, at least not in the traditional sense. It was basically a brother-sister combo from Canada who just wanted to play with music. They wrote that song on a lark. No huge plan, no big vision. But when it blew up, the pressure hit hard, so they hurried to record more music, but it was all a bust. No follow-up single, no second wave. The industry tried to craft them into pop stars, but they weren't ready, and they didn't want it. Fame wasn't the goal, fun was. So after the hype wore off, they left. Quietly. On the other hand, Len is frozen in time, imprisoned in one perfect, sun-soaked hit, and perhaps that's just how they would have liked it. 8. EagleEye Cherry.
The curtains, 'cause all we need is candlelight.
He said to the world, "Hold on tonight," but nobody anticipated he would vanish immediately after, set to the tune of EagleEye Cherry's Save Tonight. In 1997, this song was born. Then, bam, instant classic, smooth voice, emotional hook. It was a song that felt like saying goodbye to everything you loved. It struck charts across the globe. He was an overnight sensation. But then, silence. His next album? It didn't hit the same. Critics were mixed, fans were confused. The sound had evolved, but the world wanted another Save Tonight. He offered them something deeper, and they weren't prepared. So he pulled back. EagleEye Cherry. No scandals, no meltdowns, just a smooth fade from the spotlight. What's wild is he was still making music, albums, tours, the whole shebang, but without the big label push, no one really heard. He didn't stop. We just stopped watching. And even now, when they play that song at 2 a.m., you feel it. You just suspect. 9. Soul Coughing.
Side and let the man go through. Let the man go through. Move aside and let the man go through.
They were too weird, too smart, and honestly, too ahead of their time. Soul Coughing wasn't your typical 90s band. They didn't chase trends. They made their own sound. Jazz, hip-hop, poetry, rock, all mashed together into something totally fresh. Super Bon Bon and Circles hit the charts, but they never truly went mainstream, which made them kind of mysterious. But behind that unique style, total chaos. Lead singer Mike Doty was battling addiction. Tensions in the band were getting worse, and even though they had a cult following, the label didn't know what to do with them. So, nothing really pushed them to the next level. And then, they just broke. No big headlines, no huge fall, just a quiet split. Mike went solo, dropped the soul coughing sound completely, said he hated that era. But here's the kicker. Years later, fans still beg for a reunion, and soul coughing still feels like a secret the world never fully figured out. 10. Marcy Playground.
Hanging round downtown by myself, and I had so much time.
You know the song, everyone does. The band Marcy Playground released Sex and Candy in 1997, and it was everywhere. Uneasy, languorous, and weirdly addictive. Dream. It was #1. For 15 weeks, it sounded like the hit from a group whose time was about to come. But that never happened. They released a full album. Critics didn't love it. Sales dropped, and the label started pulling back. Here's the catch. The band didn't want to be pop divas at all. Its lead singer, John Wozniak, was much more of a writer than a rocker. So when the fame train came, he got off. They continued releasing music, even quietly dropping albums, for years. But the radio had turned the page, and Sex and Candy, it never left the airwaves. It still plays today. But the band behind it, gone from the spotlight. Just like that, they treated us to one memorable moment and erased themselves into the fog they brewed. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and comment.